Hello, Gaston Alexander here, and welcoming you to vlog number 4. And this is going to be the second part of the Alexander the Great story, one of my most favourite stories. Again, it's always exciting to be talking about I suppose an individual who created one of the world's largest empires known to man, is in a select handful of people who will go down as monumental titans of history, who shaped the world that we live in, who have forged the world that we live in, and is just an absolute brilliant tactician, leader, a man who went on a 10-year campaign. Let's just imagine for a second, it always gets my blood going, imagining what it must be like to leave home at the age of 20 on a campaign, to never see your homeland ever again, to continue marching onwards, not taking a step back, to continue going forward in terms of never ending 10 years without seeing your homeland. Some soldiers wouldn't have seen their wife or children for 10 long years. Speaks absolute volumes on Alexander's charisma, his leadership skills, to be able to follow a man. Perfect opportunity to show Alexander's traits already blooming at such a young age, whether that be personal courage, bravery, the decision to go against Philip's own work, well, actually to go on his own initiative in the middle of a battle upon such a young age. And this is a common trend in thread I find with a lot of great generals, leaders. They'll always make a decision off their own back that might not be the norm, or might go a little bit out of the box, whether it be Nelson at the Battle of Copenhagen, leaving the line, you know, or whether it be Alexander in that case, or Washington or Hannibal or Scipio Africanus in his battles. These are things we're going to in the future, but one common thread between these individuals is definitely that they weren't afraid to take a risk. I don't expect them to expect the risk to fail. They were obviously going in with confidence, but they weren't afraid to take it. So upon Alexander showcasing his talent, showcasing his generalship, we'll now move on board to what sort of happened after this. So upon this defeat of Athens in Thebes, Philip became what we now know as, well, he sort of created the League of Corinth, an individual who's now clumped these city-states together. There was only one that actually refused at this time, and that was Sparta, who said that if there was to be a pro-Hellenic war against Persia, that they should be the ones to lead it out of historical rights, because of 300, etc., and the history. However, they weren't no fit state to lead anybody really, and considering the Thebans had trampled them in battle and then the Macedonians had trampled the Thebans, it's quite an ironic position to be in, to be demanding to lead that. So I wouldn't be, I can understand why Philip sort of brushed that off very quickly. So upon this, well, banding together the League of Corinth, so Athens, Sparta, etc., and bringing together a very diverse military, very diverse army, he was planning on his invasion into Asia Minor. He already actually had his greatest general Parmenion, a close friend of his, similar age, already in Asia Minor, sort of getting the sort of battle plans ready, getting the logistics ready. Now, upon this, on the eve of going to his campaign, Philip was actually assassinated by a personal bodyguard, and there's a lot of rumours involved in this, whether it be Olympus involved in assassination to then pave a pathway forward for a son's glory and to be given the king. I mean, this is what I think makes Alexander's story so fascinating. So many things combine, from having such a strong childhood friendship growing up, almost like a gang of very personal individuals who would die for each other, to his royal lineage from both sides, his mother and his father, to then also his freakish ability to learn. I mean, don't get us wrong, he's being tutored by Aristotle, etc., but for then these events to fall into place right at the given moment. I mean, to be given the right of king at the age of 20 must have been a fantastic honour, and one I'm sure he was absolutely blown away by. So now with this on board, Alexander himself decided to go ahead and take the Persian campaign onto his own right. This has now become his dream, his envisionment. I mean, there was a very famous speech that Alexander done in the Book of Arion, which we'll cover later in his campaign, where he touches upon how his father had give so many great things to Macedonia, but in comparison to what he'd give, they were only small. The first things Alexander would do upon gaining the king of Macedonia would be to put down a lot of sort of rebellions. Now, there would have been rebellions in Illyria, Thrace, and sort of central Greece, whether it be Thebes. And now Thebes is the one that Alexander made a very, very big example of, and almost really sent out a message across the known world, especially Greece. Now you have to appreciate that this was a battle that isn't really talked about much. I read upon it very detailed in Arrian's book, however, it isn't really touched upon. Now, I believe this is the case because it was such a difficult battle for Alexander, and it almost resulted in a defeat. I mean, Perdiccas took a squadron forward far too early when the other phalanxes hadn't left, and left such a big gap where other infantry had to commit to that, where they were nearly broken by the Thebans at one of the palisades, because Thebes was a very fortified and protected city. It was one of the greatest ancient cities of the ancient world, you know. So in terms of being fortified, that was a battle that really pushed Alexander to the limit. I think that's why it's not really immortalised on TV or film or history, but it was such a pivotal one. And upon that battle, Alexander raised and sold Thebes into slavery as definitely a message. And you have to understand a little bit that this is such a cruel and vindictive decision, but it's easy to point the finger at one who's in that position and to say that's a bad one. But let's be honest, while he had the ideas of gallivanting on such a great war, Greece had always been notorious for stabbing each other in the back, and most nations have, to be fair. I mean, in this day and age, the people who are closest and have most to lose betray each other. It's absolutely bizarre. I mean, can't we just wear our heart on with sleeves for a change? But in terms of that sort of situation where Greece was about to the opportunity to attack Macedonia once Alexander's left for war, regardless of Alexander leaving somebody in charge of his affairs back at home. The military wasn't there, you know, so that's vastly important. But yeah, in terms of, I believe that was just a message that Alexander had to send out. One I don't even think he really had to do. He just knew he had no choice. He knew that decision needed to be made. And it's also spoke about that. This is a very fun fact I like to believe is true. There's an old famous saying that Alexander later in his life was that ashamed of what he did to Thebes and that embarrassed that he would grant a Theban man or woman, because there was not many left, anything they desired to. So now the army that Alexander took over into Asia, we are going to sort of go into a brief detail of. Now, this was a relatively small army in comparison to the army he was actually going up to face, and there's lots of different rumours about the size of Darius, the King of Kings' army, the Persians' army. But however, Alexander's was definitely outnumbered massively. However, the strength that they did have was extreme professional soldiership, the armory, the very strict training, and the fact that they were fighting as free men. They were fighting for their love and honour of their country, not necessarily fighting for the emperor or being forced to fight as such. So heading over into Asia Minor, Alexander took over an army of 40,000, and that was in the spring of 334 BC. That's when he crossed the Hellespont first into Asia Minor. Now, in those 40,000, the infantry would have been commanded by the veteran commander Parmenion, who would have been a close friend of Philip, who would have maybe had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Alexander from the start, because Alexander is going to be given a 20-year-old man, going to be given a 50-odd-year-old gentleman orders on how to run a battle or engage in a battlefield. And this is a man who had great success. Parmenion was actually had links to the relation, I believe, of Leonidas of Sparta, the one who stood at the Battle of 300. That's why he was respected so highly upon his peers, because he had such a good history in his family lineage. But going forward into that, now these were in the front line. You had 9,000 of the most professionally trained soldiers Macedonia had to offer in the phalanges. Now that could be put at 18-foot sarissa. These were the professional unit. These were trained and drilled for war. These were, to be honest with you, absolutely a behemoth of battle. Only sort of showed one real weakness, and that would have been sort of its movability or its flanks. And now these would have been guarded by what would have been almost 3,000 to 3,500 shield bearers or hypaspists. Now they would have been led by Nicanor, the son of Parmenion. Now I can imagine this to be a very strong gentleman, obviously for the fact that he's also son of a great man, and to be given that rank. Although I know Parmenion would have had to pull a few strings with that, and some of the people from Thrace and Thessaly, which would have been the elite skirmishers of the unit, would have specialised in sort of bow slinging, Cretan archers, just general skirmishing of the engagement. So they would have been almost expert javelin throwers, would have took part in a lot of the sort of sporting events or games that would have been held on to pass time in between campaigns, and would have won a lot of them sort of Olympic events, if I'm honest, because they would have had very expertise skills rather than the phalanx being drilled to be battle hardened warriors. So in terms of the second line was also covered by 7,000 Greek allies, all from all over Greece. This is one thing I like to think that another reason I think Alexander had everything falling to plate for him is that because of what Philip done and how they conquered and unified Greece under fear and sort of under obligation, this allowed them to have such a diverse army. We're talking, imagine being able to pick the best units or the best, yeah, well, to be honest with you, the best units from each city-state in Greece, whether it be the cavalry from Thessalonia, the infantry from Sparta, Macedonian infantry, the navy from Athens. I mean, it's almost like the Great Trojan War in all the heroes that went over to fight in it, how each took great, and like the Myrmidons, and each was a sort of select unit. Alexander's almost 1,000 Greeks, and then the 5,000 mercenaries. The mercenaries would have been, again, just general sort of hoplites with the 8-foot spear, so that wouldn't have been too bad. And now, you, last but not least, you would have the shock troops of Alexander's army, and this is something that would really get me excited, and that was the 1,800 companion cavalry. This would have been a devastating unit. Imagine the fear that these would have brought to the battlefield, the sound, the adrenaline. I don't believe personally that we could even get close to feeling what a cavalry charge would have felt like in the heat of the moment. The smell, the aura. These were led by, well, commanded by the oldest son of Parmenion, Nicanor's older brother, Philotas. These characters will play a huge part in Alexander's life later, but the royal squadron was actually led by Alexander himself personally, and he rode at the helm of this unit, and he made sure that this unit was engaged in the most dangerous and difficult and honourable positions on the battlefield. He wanted to win personal glory, he wanted to rival Achilles. And just reflecting upon now, we've sort of went into detail of how what army Alexander was now taking over. There was other cavalry units, a separate 900 by Callis, another separate 900 by Cassan. Now finishing upon this, in the next video we're going to be talking about the Battle of the Granicus, which is the first engagement in Asia Minor, which is a great one as well, another one of my personal, again, they're all going to be very, very exciting to myself. But just a quick overview of what sort of we've learned from Alexander so far and how we can incorporate it into today's age. One of them being to be very sure of your own ability before sort of voicing it. Or, I mean, Alexander was very confident and would know beforehand, whether it be the Gordian knot, whether it be the Battle of Granicus, and his ability, whereas the Persians always were very arrogant in thinking their victory was too soon. Another one being is that to take risks, whether it be in the Battle of Crimea when he took that decision himself, to be responsible for your own actions. It takes more courage to stand up and believe in what you believe in and not hide away from being wrong, you know. And so taking risks is definitely one of them. Learning, asking questions, and I suppose another one being leading by example. So let's just treat us how we'd like to be treated when we do something. If we give it our all and realise that someone doesn't have to be watching us or praising us, it has to be internal sometimes, and that drive has to come from within. You have to realise that nobody's watching you in the arena, and this is now your time, and that everything at all, whether it be sport, whether it be work. And it has really changed my philosophy, because these individuals give their full life to one belief and ideal. I'm sure, again, it's what motivates me through cycling in the rain to go and do a 10-hour shift. That's what can get me through. Again, we have it not as difficult as such. But again, yes, like and subscribe. The next video on Alexander will be coming at the end of the week. It will be vlog 3. We will be covering the Battle of Granicus, the Asia Minor period, and probably hopefully get the Battle of Issus in there. We'll try not to keep them too long. I realise they are a bit lengthy at the moment. We will try and cut them down. It is just learning this process, but I am growing as we go. And thank you again. Please like and subscribe. Gaston Alexander out.